Welcome to the channel, everybody, and today we got a fun weekend project. We're going to be building a drift trike. Let's show you what we're working with. Alright, so getting started, the first thing we need is a junk donor bike, which we have right here. Additionally, you're going to need an axle kit. Now these are the same for drift trikes or go-karts, but they'll all work the same. This particular one I have here is a 32-inch model that comes complete with a brake rotor and caliper, pillow blocks, and the end bearings. Next we have a plastic seat. This is pretty much just used for go-kart applications. And lastly, I have a Harbor Freight Predator 212 motor. Additionally, I'll leave a link in the description for all the parts I use in this build. So this is the basic setup we're going for. We're going to have a seat followed by the axle, and the engine will be trailing behind. Now, to start measuring for the frame, now this axle runs off of 2 carrier bearings or unit bearings. And these are the only measurements we're really concerned about right now. So we're going to find the spread or width between these two, and we're going to start off with those points. So for our framework, we're going to be using this 1.5 inch square tubing, which has 1/8 of an inch sidewalls. So we've determined that the spread from that unit bearing to that unit bearing on center is 16 7/8. So we've transferred that number to our square tubing. We've just made our 45-degree marks. We're just going to notch that out of there, and we're going to follow that center line and that center line for our frame. Okay, now it's time to bend our 45s and we can weld this up. There we go. Alright, here's how our axle is going to sit on top of that frame. So we just need to transfer those 4 through bolts over and get them drilled out now. So where our through bolts come through, we're going to come in with a piece of this tube right here just to keep this from crushing with our through bolt. So we're going to cut up 4 of them now. Alright, so we got this thing all bolted up and things were going really well until I checked the axle, and you can see this thing is quite bent. So there's quite a wobble on the outside, so this thing's going to have to go back. So in the meantime, we're going to keep on building, and I'll start the return on this thing, and hopefully we'll get a new one. Alright, so just to finish this up, I just did some fish mouth cuts right there, followed by a 45, which is going to be on the front. So you can see that finishes that off nicely, and then we're going to come in with the extra piece we cut out earlier and add a gusset right there. This is where our down tube is going to be heading up from, so this will give us a good place to mount all that as well. Now that we have all this cut, it's time to get tack welding. Okay, we got our main lower part of the frame already completed. Now it's time to move over to our head tube. So we're using this box steel for our head tube or down tube, which will get welded to the frame. So now we need to turn over and come up with the head tube from the bike. Alright, now it's time to cut up this bike. And all we're going to do is focus on keeping this head tube so we can use the forks front wheel. And we're just going to come along here and cut these welds off. I'm using a laser level just to help me line things up. So I have this right here on my center line. You're following it forward. It's meeting the center of my frame, and we can see it hitting just perfectly down the center of the forks. When I stand it up, I'm going to have to worry about plumbing it out as well next. Alright, so this is the down tube I was telling you about. We've already have it notched to meet the bevel of our head tube. This is where that's going to go, and it's going to meet the frame just like that. So before we get this welded though, I am going to put some holes down the side just to give it a different look. Alright, got all the holes drilled in the down tube. So now we can weld this into place. Alright, the frame's all welded up and come together really good. Now I just got a shipment in the mail, so this is the second axle kit. Let's hope this one's in better shape than the other one. Alright, let's see how it does. Alright, that's much better than last time. Alright, we can work with this. Alright, now it's time to get the seat on this machine. So as you can see, I already have a piece of angle welded or spot welded into the center of this frame and center marked for the holes that match the seat. At this point, we can come back in with the front piece of metal. As you can see, I had a fish mouth cut this kind of funny, so it fits just like this in between the seat frame. Now what this allows me to do is bolt this to the front half of the seat, line it all up in the seat frame, and then we can weld it together. There it is, the seat is mounted. As you can see, I got the seat as low as you possibly can, as well as I got a lean on it just as well to make it a little bit more comfortable. Now we can move on to the engine plate. Alright, here is the engine plate we're going to be using. Now this is an item I got right off of Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description. It's only about $30. Now what makes this really easy and convenient is you bolt it right on here. It already has 4 slotted holes for the motor to add for chain adjustment, as well as it comes with hardware and these rubber isolators. So now we just got to line up the motor and get this thing welded on. Okay, so I bolted on the engine plate to the bottom of this motor. I've also added this cross member right here, and that allows us to get both of our sprockets aligned. Okay, now that we have everything perfectly lined up, we can tack weld the engine plate to the frame. Alright, moving on, so now we're going to try to tackle the brakes. So this is the caliper that came with this axle kit, and it gives you absolutely no provisions on how to mount it to the frame. So what I come up with is this quick template here, which bolts to the very back of this caliper. So here's that bracket transferred over to 1/8 inch steel, so it's bolted to the back of this caliper, and now we can slide it over the rotor and we can weld it in place to the frame. Okay, since we got our caliper located, now we need a place to put our feet and the actual brake pedal itself. So to do that, we're using that same square tubing that we used for our initial frame. And we have some round stock we're going to just slide through there, and we're going to mount that right about there. Alright, so this is my 3-piece brake pedal solution, this being the brake pedal itself. Both of these are going to ride on the actual foot bar of this. So this is going to ride on that foot bar, be able to carry over the actual brake lever itself. And this one right here also over the foot pedal itself, or the foot rest, which will mount the master cylinder, and this will depress the master cylinder. So now we're going to slide these over this footrest and we'll be able to weld it up. Alright, so this is just quick tack welded up, but you can see the operation of this thing. Just push on the brake pedal, it pushes on the master cylinder. Alright, finally all the fabrication work is complete. Now we can take this whole thing apart and prepare it for paint. All right, everything's now fully painted. All we have to do now is get it fully assembled. Alright, now that we have this thing entirely assembled, it's time to discuss the wheels. Now this is the second set of wheels that I had for this machine, mostly because we had an issue with the hub bolt pattern. Now this axle kit that I have come out with a 78mm bolt pattern, which is distance from here to here. And the other set of wheels that I had was proper drift trike wheels. They were 10-inch overall height with slick tires. They had a 58mm bolt pattern, so that didn't work. Had to switch to these, which is really no big deal, except in one area, which I'm going to explain next. Here it is, fully assembled, wheels on, no longer on those little jack stands. And one thing I should just probably mention, if you haven't seen it already, is I have an 1.5 inch extra piece of steel holding up the axle, which acts as a lowering kit, only to make up the difference for these taller wheels, because I used to have those 11-inch originals. So here it is all together. And the reason for putting those 1.5 inch blocks in there was to keep this frame as low and level as possible in relation to adding those taller wheels. Okay, it's finally come together. The thing is looking great. Now, any parts you see in here that you're interested in, I have listed below with a full cost breakdown in the description. Once again, thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button right here. Additionally, join me for the next video where I do my first test run. Hopefully it goes well. Alright, thanks for watching, guys.